We are looking at the Wolf Mountains now. We are to the west of the Wolf Mountains on the other side. And let me point some of the features out to you. We have the crow's nest. It's in the middle of the Wolf Mountains here. And it's going to be a little bit difficult to point out, but the crow's nest is actually right there. It's kind of like right where that saddle is, that notch in the middle of the mountains. And below that area is an area called the Divide, but you can't see it. Now if we put off to the west, we have the headwaters of Reno Creek right down in here. Those are the trees. And right behind the trees is an area called the Plateau, or the first line of bluffs. And you'll get to see all that a little bit better when we get a little bit further down there, closer to it. And of course, all the way at the horizon, way back here, that's the Little Bighorn Valley. Now, where we last left off from the last segment, we had Second Lieutenant Charles Albert Varnum, commander of the Indian Scouts, and his Arikara and Ree Scouts. They're actually up on the crow's nest at this point. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're waiting for it to get light. And once it does, they're going to look off down the west, down Reno Creek, and hopefully they will spot the Indian village. Well, finally at daybreak, around 5 in the morning, Varnum and the Scouts, they have enough light where they can actually look off to the west, and they look down Reno Creek, and they look into the valley of the Little Bighorn, but they do not see any Indian village there. And they don't see any activity. But what they do see is right behind the bluffs in front of the Little Bighorn Valley, there is camp smoke billowing up from behind the bluffs. So at least Varnum and the Scouts, they know that they can't see the camp because it's obscured by the bluffs, but they know that there is a camp there just based on the smoke billowing up. Another thing that the Scouts sight on the far western bluff of the Little Bighorn Valley is the pony herd. And it's a large pony herd, thousands of ponies going back and forth grazing on the land. And of course the pony herd's going to be close to the village. So seeing camp smoke and seeing the pony herd on the far western bluff of the Little Bighorn Valley, they know that there is at least one village located right there at that location. So with all this information, Varnum dispatches 2 Arikara Scouts off of the crow's nest and back down Davis Creek, going east, back to the halt number 1 camp so they can inform Custer of the situation. Now while the Scouts are on their way to Custer, Varnum and the remainder of the Scouts up here on the crow's nest continue to look to the west, and at some point they realize, or they notice, 3 Sioux warriors are actually moving down Reno Creek and actually moving toward the crow's nest and toward Davis Creek. And this is bad news, because if the Indians continue to move past the Wolf Mountains here and go up Davis Creek, they're going to discover the troops, and then the Indians could scatter, escape, and they could go back and tell the village that soldiers in the area, and then the village would scatter and you'd have a failed campaign. So Varnum decides that the Indians, the 3 that are down here in the Reno Creek area, they have to be dealt with, they have to be eliminated. So everybody moves off the crow's nest and they come down into the forward area, an area called the Divide, in an attempt to eliminate the Sioux warriors. Unfortunately, they get down in the low area and the Indians can't be found. So they go back up to the crow's nest, and after sitting up there for a few minutes, they notice the Indians, they find them. But the Indians pass the crow's nest, go across the Wolf Mountains here, and actually start going down Davis Creek. So this is bad news. A little bit later on, Varnum is looking to the north, and he realizes that there's a Sioux hunting party of 7 warriors also roaming about down here. So now we have 2 separate sightings of Indians in the forward area, and if any of these Indians spot the cavalry, they're going to go back and alert the village, and this is going to be just bad news for the cavalry. So at this point, Varnum and the scouts just remain on the crow's nest and just hope for Custer to arrive. Meanwhile, back at the halt number 1 camp, Custer, at about 8 in the morning, receives his first bad news of the day. He is informed that during the night march down Davis Creek, one of the Company F pack mules actually lost a box of hardtack. It had fallen off the pack mule and it was laying on the back trail. So it's out in the open, and if there are any Indians on the back trail, they can find this pack, and that would be proof positive that soldiers were in the area, and those Indians could alert the village. So that was bad news. So the pack had to be gotten. They had to go back and retrieve it. So Custer dispatched Sergeant Curtis from Company F and several men from that company back down Davis Creek on the back trail to get the pack. So they left. While Curtis and his party is away getting the pack, the Arikara scouts arrive at halt number 1, and they inform Custer that the village has been spotted in the Little Bighorn Valley. So at this point, Custer, with Fred Gerard and Bloody Knife and a couple other individuals, mount their horses and leave the halt number 1 camp to come to the crow's nest here to see for themselves what's going on. Captain Tom Custer and Chief Trumpeter Henry Voss also join the party, but they do not ride very far with Custer before he turns them back, tells them to go back to the halt number 1 camp and inform Reno, tell him to take temporary command of the whole regiment, get the regiment up and move them down west closer to the Wolf Mountains here. So both Tom Custer and Chief Trumpeter Voss turn around and go back to halt number 1 camp to get the command up and moving back, moving toward the crow's nest here. Up on the crow's nest, Varnum and the scouts are still watching the three Sioux that are moving up Davis Creek and the 7 Sioux to the north here. They look behind them, and to their horror, they see camp smoke coming from the halt number 1 camp. So the soldiers are cooking breakfast, so this is no good. And they also see a dust cloud coming toward them. That is Custer's party moving down Davis Creek. Well, the 3 Sioux on Davis Creek also see the dust cloud, and they scatter. And Varnum looks to the north, and he realizes that the 7 Sioux are no longer there as well. They probably noticed the dust cloud as well, and they scattered. So at this point, everybody up on the crow's nest feels that the command has been spotted and that these Indians are going back to the village all the way down Reno Creek here, and they're going to alert the camp, and the camp is going to scatter, and you're going to have a failed campaign. So when Custer's party finally arrived at the crow's nest, the first thing Varnum suggests is that they put out all the campfires, because the camp smoke is going to be seen by the hostiles, which were out in the forward area here, and it's going to give away the soldiers' positions very easily. Also, Varnum suggests that Custer look down into the Little Bighorn Valley and just to see what the lieutenant and what the scouts had seen. Unfortunately, by this time Custer had gotten here, it's about 10:30 in the morning, and as you can see, there's a haze blocking the view. Now, if I turn around here and you look off to the east at the Wolf Mountains, you can see the haze in front of the mountains. And there's actually even a further chain of mountains down to the east and south called the Bighorns, and I don't even know if you can see them because the haze is so bad. It always gets hazy like this, especially when it's really hot, and it is hot today. So Custer looked down the Reno Creek area into the Little Bighorn Valley, but he couldn't see anything. He couldn't see the camp smoke, and he couldn't see the pony herd because of the haze. It was filling the valley. It was a long distance. So Custer had to take Varnum and the scouts at their word.